What's happening, guys? Call of Duty Black Ops Kid here, coming at you with a movie review. Now, I haven't done one of these because I mainly do gaming and stuff, but today happens to be one of those things that I just felt like I had to review. Now, for the last few days, and for like the last week actually, I should say, Venom, the movie Venom, which is featuring a Spider-Man villain, or whatever you would like to call it, I don't really know the basics of terms, but basically the Spider-Man universe, Venom. We've been seeing a lot of reviews come out on Facebook posts, Google saying that the movie was very boring and bland, and then IGN gave it a 4 out of 10, and even beyond all of those reviews, I went out and saw it anyways. Now, today's review is going to consist of Venom, which is a Marvel Universe film, in the future where basically an alien crashes down from space, and basically it is I don't remember exactly what they call it, but a parasite of sorts, as they like to joke throughout the whole movie. The movie's kind of actually... The main character is Eddie, who is a reporter for a news station or some sort of press. I don't really know for sure. Basically, he does like these kind of conspiracy theory interviews and kind of exposes big companies, brings a lot of good bad guys down, and he pretty much will do anything to get in his way. So his girlfriend, who I don't know as well either, works for some bigwig as well. And they're having a happy life. They have date night. He has his own apartment in, I think, San Diego. So he has his own apartment in San Diego. He's living life, and he's having a great time. Basically, he runs across this. His boss calls him into his office for an exclusive interview with this evil guy who runs this big company. Now, this big company is also launched into space, which has, of course, Venom and all these other parasites. So the bigwig basically is doing all these testings, and people have died already, like scientists crashing down from space. And the parasites are basically Venom. Venom eventually finds his way to the main character, but at first he goes to interview him, and he goes on his girlfriend's laptop. And a lot of things happen. He ends up reading a bunch of files about a bunch of missing persons and deceased. So when he sees that, he's originally just supposed to talk about the rocket ships, and he goes there for a completely different story. Basically, he attacks the bigwig and gets really in trouble, and he's basically getting threatened. He goes back to his office, where they, of course, fire him for what he did. And then his girlfriend breaks up with him because of what he did. And then eventually all of the parasites are captured except for one, which is in actually, I think, an old Vietnamese lady. And then 6 months go by, of course, with the parasite inside of that person for 6 months while it's killing a bunch of people, which is actually pretty gratifying to see. Being a PG-13 film, there's actually a lot of death and carnage, a lot of swear words like shit and So, surprisingly for a PG-13 movie, it actually swears and kind of kills a lot of people in the making of this film. I'm going to try and go, I will let you know when spoilers happen. There'll be a black screen, they'll say spoilers, before anything more happens. So before this point, I would recommend you, if you do not want it to be spoiled, there will be a thumbnail down below where you can see a pretty much fast forward to the end of the review. So after this happens, now that we've broken down the main story of this movie, it kind of goes really south from here. You have Eddie, who has, just eating and drinking and just trying to find means about his day. He has a really loud roommate, and instead of confronting him, he kind of bottles up his anger. When doing so, he kind of made a big mistake. So he's doing a lot of drinking and doing a lot of stuff. He goes to a grocery store, the person gets robbed, and he just sits behind and then pays. So he's kind of turned into this big loser of sorts. Now, after this point, scientists, when they're finally starting to experiment with the parasites, they eventually move to human people, which is taking homeless people off the streets. And basically, once that happens, Eddie basically gets a call from one of the scientists saying that he needs to come there and report this. He ends up going in. Before this, he's talking. He doesn't believe her. He sees this homeless lady on the street, which is a friend of his, and basically they're getting along just fine. And he ends up finding her at the facility. He's taking pictures, trying to find report the story, because he's a reporter and that's what he's used to. So he's taking pictures. He finds her. She's freaking out because she has one of the parasites in her. Of course, that is Venom. He eventually breaks through a solid glass door, which is meant to contain the specimen, which I think is pretty ridiculous in that point of sense. But regardless, he breaks her out. Venom gets inside him. Once the host leaves that body, I don't know if they die or they don't. But in this case, I think she dies. And in certain points of the movie, fast forwarding, this happens quite often, yet it kind of makes no sense. So Eddie basically runs out of the facility while people are trying to attack him. He's busting through walls, jumping up great heights. He eventually escapes and then eats a bunch of food, and there's a lot of laughs in this film after this point. There wasn't like a lot of laughs before this as well. They actually made this film quite funny in a certain degree. So he runs around, he gets out of there pretty quickly, and he goes home, eats, and then the doctor that let him in obviously gets in trouble because they find out that he helped Eddie, which is a reporter, which they already had, confrontation earlier in the film. And so at this point, he's kind of upset. He sends them to go find Eddie. Eddie then, of course, is not expecting it. Venom just keeps saying hunger, and he doesn't really know what's going wrong with him. He eventually takes out all the bad guys, doing a lot of pretty cool moves, actually. Very impressive visuals as well, with Venom, taking out bad guys and stuff. And after this point, they go on pretty much like a 15 to 20 minute car chase, which is actually ridiculous and it's kind of boring at this point. Basically just kind of Venom kind of growing attached to Eddie, kind of doing all these cool tricks, and it's actually quite a good experience after this point. Basically, he looks in a car mirror, he sees Venom, he kind of has another altercation, more drones that just keep exploding, and then eventually gets taken down. He falls over, and then of course Venom takes over, heals up his body, and then beats up the bad guys again. Eats the guy's head off, and Eddie's kind of, freaked out. Of course, he swims away, and then they eventually just kind of talk. It's kind of weird. They kind of poke out of his back and like talk on him, kind of like a serpent kind of thing. Eventually, the film goes forward even more. So Venom and him are actually talking for quite a while. They kind of have a mutual understanding. He eventually freaks out, tries to find his ex-girlfriend. His ex-girlfriend, of course, at this point in time, has moved on, went to a different guy, and there's kind of a big altercation at the end. So they don't really get along. She doesn't want anything to do with him. He eventually finds her again at a restaurant, and he's just eating live lobsters, just being a complete and utter chaos. He eventually gets an MRI, which they find out, of course, Venom is kind of his weakness is to frequencies, over 600 frequencies, or whatever it is, 6,000 frequency. And he actually makes that apparent in the film, which I think is kind of weird, that they would actually tell he knows his own weakness, kind of thing, living on an alien planet. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's how they, I don't really know much about the Venom universe, really. So basically that happens. You go to MRI. They say, take it easy for a couple days. We'll find out what's wrong with you. And then, of course, that chick, that's the Asian lady from 6 months ago, finally makes an appearance, takes over the big wig. The big wig now has which, of course, he gets attacked by one of the aliens who becomes Riot. Well, you don't find that out till the very end of the film. So now that Venom and him are there, they eventually get split due to frequency towards the end of the movie after getting attacked by the goons once again, and as well as he gets found out once he's attacking in a nightclub, and the flashbangs, of course, with a lot of frequency, makes him kind of jump a little bit. He eventually takes out all these SWAT guards, and then he is caught by his ex-girlfriend, who is really concerned about him. She sees him bite off a head of someone. They're freaking out. she says you need to go see a doctor. Basically, Venom and him split. Once they go to the hospital because they find something very urgent, like he's trying to attack his heart because he's not eating enough. So at that point, it's just kind of like the movie progresses after a certain point really quickly. You kind of have to be on your toes and ready for everything to kind of happen. So once this happens, Eddie and his ex-girlfriend are kind of making, like, trying not to, like, fight about things. Venom is split from his body, who then Venom, of course, goes into a dog. Then he is captured. He goes to the bigwig's main plant. They finds out that he has a parasite in him as well. Then he's getting taken out to the woods to be killed. Then his girlfriend, who has Venom inside of her, weirdly enough, not bad, honestly, makes out with Eddie. Eddie gets back Venom. Venom goes to attack, and originally Venom's plan was with the rest of his parasitical friends, which there was only 4, of course, millions on whatever planet they're on. Basically, all of his parasitical friends want to come down to Earth, eat everybody, and then they can have their planet for their own. Now, Venom has a change of heart because he sees how Eddie is such a loser, and Venom, apparently, on his planet is a loser. So it kind of evens out. Eddie and Venom kind of merge together to take down Riot, which Riot has all these cool weapons like maces and, scythe hands and stuff. And eventually there's a pretty good standstill. Venom loses. Eddie gets stabbed in the chest with one of his scythes. And you think the movie is over. Eddie is definitely dead as it pierces his heart. And Venom kind of just attaches to Eddie. Eddie lives. Of course, he takes that thing that he stabbed him with in the chest. He takes that. They're flying up in a rocket to go home to bring back all the other alien friends. Basically, he jumps on the rocket, cuts the rocket in half. Rocket blows up, kills that person, and Venom and Eddie go down. Venom dies. Eddie lands in the water, and all is well. He goes to the very end of the movie where he talks to his girlfriend about the kiss and trying to figure out what their feelings are. And of course, as they're walking away, Venom talks to him. Venom lives, and then that is the end of the movie. Now, of course, he goes to the very end where the person's robbing that same convenience store from earlier in the film. And he, of course, tackles him down, bites his head off, and that is the end of the film. Basically, they're trying to have a co-mutual relationship, and that is the end of Venom. Now, of course, the after credits, which everyone wants to know, which that will also have its own separate down below if you guys did not want to see that, will be right now. Basically, the end credit, Eddie he has a new job. Of course, Venom ends with the Marvel mysterious after credits. Basically, Eddie goes to a prison to go talk to someone about an interview, and basically inside of that person there was actually 4 parasitic alien species. One goes into Eddie, one goes into the bigwig, one is just randomly somewhere. Maybe it went into I think it went into this one black guy, but it might have escaped. And then there was one. Oh, maybe there was just 3. 4 or 3, one of the 2. I can't exactly remember. Regardless, he goes to the end of the movie, and he goes up to Matthew McConaughey, which is, he finds out that Carnage is inside of him, which is also another Marvel's villain as well, next to side Venom and, of course, Riot. So that kind of sums up Marvel's Venom. It was actually a worthwhile experience. There's a lot of funny moments. There was a lot of action-packed moments. And there was a lot of kind of cool. It was actually a really good film. I usually don't see movies like opening day, but kind of seeing how all the bad reviews and stuff happening around Venom, I just had to see it, kind of review it, and make sure I can clear up any confusion with the film. I will say there is kind of a little bit of boring moments, but nothing that kind of distracts the film. It has a little bit of a slow start, but once it builds up to that key point, it's all action-packed and good from there. So really, honestly, the first 30 to 35 minutes is actually really boring. Like kind of the build up to the plot. Once the plot gets there, the film is actually very awesome. Honestly, if I had to give it a review out of 10, I'd give it maybe a 7.6 out of 10, as there is kind of a build up to the start. Maybe a 7 point, I'll actually go 7.8 out of 10, because the film is actually very interesting. Venom is actually an awesome, interesting character, and the cast of characters is actually pretty interesting. To have an evil villain and subplot with such great character is actually something very awesome to see inside the Marvel Universe. And I feel like they haven't really had something like that since, obviously, Marvel's Infinity War with Thanos. But it wasn't like a super huge apparent villain, but it actually turned out pretty well. And I was really happy with the result, and I'm actually not bad that I spent $23 on this film. So, thank you guys so much for watching. If this video gets kind of a decent amount of views and stuff like that, I think I kind of want to continue to do kind of movie reviews, especially just mainly superheroes or maybe something with action-packed films possibly, kind of giving it a little bit of a diverse feeling. Of course, make sure to show any support to the channel. Please leave a like on this video if you appreciate the review. And of course, if you guys want to see spoilers or you just kind of want to hear more about the story, check out the second portion. I tried not to spoil it too much till the very end. And of course, subscribe for more movie reviews, game reviews, gaming news, and anything like that in between. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Make sure you also comment anything that you have any questions about the Venom film, as I'll try my best to explain them. Thank you guys so much. You guys have a good day.